everybody, my name is Victoria and I'm here today to talk to you about all the books that I finished reading in January, or at least attempted to finish reading in January. This month I completed 4 books, DNF'd 1 book, and then I didn't quite finish another book that I'm planning on continuing and finishing in February. First book that I finished in the month of January was on January 1st, and that was Brandon Sanderson's Starsight. This is the second book in the Skyward series, which I believe is going to be a 4-book series, and this really threw me for a loop, I would say, for the first like 50 to 100 pages, and I didn't know where the story was going. I didn't know if I liked where the story was going because it's so different, and you have to know that between Skyward and Starsight, the second book is really different. It really does take an unexpected turn. You're kind of in a different world, in a different branch of the universe. A lot of the people that I saw read and review this book rated it a little bit on the lower side because it doesn't have the same feel as Skyward, and they missed that feel. However, I thought that this really just blossomed the series in an unexpected and refreshing, fun way, and I really like the direction that the story is going. I'm all for it. There's definitely a lot more of expansion of the universe. We learn a lot more about alien life forms in this universe. We don't spend a lot of time on Spence's home planet, which is, I think, what some people sort of complained about, and you don't spend a lot of time with the characters that you got to know in Skyward, but really you're introduced to a whole new fresh cast of characters who are just as fun and interesting, but very few of them are human, and so that's kind of the difference between the first 2 books. I really enjoyed it. I'm really excited to get to the 3rd one whenever it comes out. I think we have a little while to wait though, sadly. I don't know how I'm going to wait that long, but I gave Starsight 5 stars. It was a great way to start off the month of January. Next, I picked up Children of Blood and Bone. I think I made it 100 pages or so. I was really surprised that I DNF'd this book. I would have liked this to be great. Of course, whenever you pick up a book, you want it to be great, but this, no. This book just wasn't holding my interest. The characters fell very flat. There's only one character that I was genuinely interested in following her story, and that was the character of Amari. No one else really had a very clearly defined character, I thought. The writing is okay. It relies on action to keep your interest, and I found that we had kind of one action sequence after another, and that was supposed to kind of keep my interest as a reader, but to me, I need a little bit more depth of story. I need more depth of character, and maybe I gave up on this a little early, but I was not really excited to pick this up, and I was kind of just reading it to read it, so I decided, why waste my time? That sounds harsh, but why waste my time with a book that I'm not excited to pick up and genuinely interested in? So, we did not finish Children of Blood and Bone. Let me know if you think I made a big mistake and that I should maybe try this at a later date. I'm not going to unhaul it yet. I think I'm going to hang on to it just in case maybe it just wasn't the right time for me to read it. Next, I picked up Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery, and this was just charming. We're reading this in a group read-along. If you haven't heard, it's the Annealong, and it's hosted by Tia and Amanda. I'll link the info down below. The first book of the series, Anne of Green Gables, I have read this before, so technically this was a reread. However, I didn't really remember anything. Anne of Green Gables follows the story of a young orphan, and she is taken into this family that was expecting to get a boy, and then Anne shows up, and Anne is not at all what they were really asking for, and they fall in love with her, and it's just a beautiful story. It's very sad. It's much sadder than I ever remembered it being. There's definitely some real growing up moments for Anne as she experiences the ups and downs of life. I don't want to spoil anything in case you haven't read it, so I'm not going to say more than that. But this was just a touching, wonderfully written story. The writing is beautiful. The character of Anne is just someone that you love instantly, and her whole universe that she is adopted into, you want to step into the pages. That's how I felt while reading Anne of Green Gables. I wanted to just be there and be a part of the world. I'm really excited to continue on with the series. I have not read the whole series, and so we'll be reading Anne of Avonlea for the month of February, and this just was amazing. 5 stars. I'm also participating in the Lord of the Readalong, hosted by Krista and Sarah, also linked down below, and we read The Hobbit in the month of January. This is also a reread for me. However, it's been a while, probably since high school or maybe early college is when I read The Lord of the Rings. I want to say I was in college, but The Hobbit is the shortest of the Lord of the Rings series. It follows Bilbo. You probably are fairly familiar if you are anywhere in pop culture, if you've seen the movies. I actually haven't seen all the Hobbit movies. I think I've seen like the first one and never got around to the other 2. But for the record, there should not need to be 3 movies for The Hobbit. I think that's stretching it out a little bit too much. But I might still pick them up, maybe at the library if I can find them on DVD or something. Because I am kind of curious of how they did that in 3 movies. It definitely could have been 1 movie, maybe 2 movies. Okay, I'll give them 2 movies. But this is not a long book. It's not even 300 pages. And they got 3 movies out of it. I don't know. I really enjoyed rereading The Hobbit. It takes a little bit more focus sometimes just to get into the writing style, but I didn't have too much trouble with that. I ended up giving this 4 stars, not because I really found many flaws with it, but just because it did have some sections where my interest was just wandering a little bit. I tend to get a little distracted and a little bit bogged down by books that go on long journeys and characters that go on these long epic journeys. I don't always love those kinds of stories just because I always feel like at some point in the journey there's a bit of a lull in what's happening, and I felt that a little bit in The Hobbit. However, maybe like only 1 or 2 instances. Most of the time I was really interested in the forward moving plot, and it doesn't really get stuck too often, but I did find myself like sometimes I just was like, I don't feel like picking up The Hobbit. But overall, this is a really fun story. We are introduced to Gollum in this book, which is my favorite part of this book, is chapter 5, when Bilbo and Gollum are exchanging these riddles, and I just love that chapter so much. It's my favorite. So 4 stars to The Hobbit. Really enjoyed it. Very excited to continue on with the rest of Lord of the Rings. Also in the month of January, I've focused on a couple of books that have been on my TBR for the longest. And one of those books was Bossypants by Tina Fey. And I did successfully finish this book. It's not a hard read at all. It follows Tina Fey's experiences with Saturday Night Live, with writing 30 Rock, which is a show I haven't seen. So now I am kind of interested to go and find 30 Rock. I don't know if it's on Netflix, actually. I have to go look, or maybe on Amazon Prime. Those are the only things that I have that might have 30 Rock on it. And it talks a little bit about Tina Fey's personal life, but not as much as I would have wanted. I don't know, maybe I'm really nosy. With an autobiographical book, I'm always interested in getting to know the person a little bit, and I did feel like this book was just like funny anecdote after funny anecdote, and it was just Tina Fey being funny. And we know that Tina Fey's funny, and I think when I pick up a book about someone written by the person, I want to get to know them a little bit more, and I didn't feel like that really happened in this book. It just seemed like we got Tina Fey humor. And that's great. I enjoyed it. But I want a little bit more out of my autobiographical content. I think towards the end of this book, she gets a little bit more personal. She talks about being a mom, and especially a working mom, and kind of the shame that working moms are sometimes put through by both themselves and by other moms. And that to me was finally like getting into something a little bit more personal to her, and I was just more interested in that side. It just didn't happen as much in this book. So it depends on what you want. If you want funny Tina Fey anecdotes, and if you're a big fan of 30 Rock, if you're a big fan of SNL, definitely for you. Other than that, though, it's a little bit forgettable, I would say. I think I gave this book 3 stars. This next book I didn't finish, but I wanted to talk about it briefly. I'm still working on it, but it's Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. This is another book that I've had on my shelf since high school, so definitely over 10 years now I've owned this book. I'm really glad I didn't read this in high school, because I already know I would not have understood any of it. I'm really surprised that they make high schoolers read this book, because I think there's a lot that's just really too much for a high school brain. Not that high schoolers aren't smart, but I don't think my high school self would have been able to appreciate everything going on in this book. Honestly, I still don't know if I completely appreciate everything that's going on in this book. This book follows Yossarian, and Yossarian is a World War II fighter pilot, and he is not a very good example of a fighter pilot because he doesn't want to fight, and he tries to get out of the war. He fakes some illnesses so that he can be in the hospital instead of going on missions, and his general, who's in charge of his brigade, keeps upping the amount of missions that they're supposed to go on. So every time Yossarian gets close to it, they increase the amount of missions they're supposed to do. So he feels like he can never go home. This book is definitely about the corruption and the bureaucracy of the military and war, and just the corruption in American politics and war. This is just a really grim book, and I'm glad I didn't read it in high school because I think it would have gone over my head. I've been reading this book for about 3 weeks now because it's hard to get through. It's really dense. I have to concentrate pretty hard, and I don't always have that like mental facility at the end of the day, at the end of the workday, and so this is really taking me a long time to get through. It's slowing me down a little bit, but I wanted to mention it in my wrap-up. Even though I'm not finished, I'm not sure what I'm going to rate this. I'm thinking not very high, to be honest, because I feel like it's rather repetitive. It's almost like I should DNF this book. But for some reason, I'm making myself push through it. Maybe it's because I'm like this far away from the end. It doesn't look far, but it is far away. Probably after I finish filming this video, I will attempt to read more of this book. Because if I can finish this book, I can move on to other things. Those are all the books that I either read or attempted to read in the month of January. Let me know down below what you read and what was your favorite book that you read in the month of January. Also, let me know, have you read any of these? Do you have any opinions? Should I finish Catch-22? Should I abandon ship? I probably should, but I probably won't either. Thank you so much for watching my video today, and keep reading great books. I'll see you in my next one. Bye-bye.